Hey guys, so it has been a while and I feel like I'm saying that literally every time I come back on YouTube because every time I come back on YouTube something seems to go wrong, so I post like a couple of videos and then I just disappear forever and everyone's like, oh, she's gone again. So I just wanted to kind of make a video to discuss everything that's been going on over the last like 8 weeks and why I haven't been on here and why I didn't feel like posting, because it was definitely a big plan of mine to come on and continue to post as like regularly as possible. I wanted to get like a couple of videos up a week, and I found that easier to do via my phone because I've been using my phone a lot more for vlogging recently and things like that, and I found that really handy. So that's I'm still filming on my phone now. I'm actually in the tack room, so you can see all photos and stuff above of the glory days. But I'm gonna film this kind of like similar to how I did my previous video, so kind of just in one segment rather than cutting it up and over editing it into loads of bits. I'm gonna see if I can keep it as raw as possible, because I've tried to film this video a fair few times and I have cried a lot trying to film this video. So my aim today, the goal is not to cry whilst filming this. But yeah, things have been pretty rough. So as some of you may know, like if you follow me over on Instagram or if you've watched like my previous video, I've briefly discussed it in that. I am pregnant at the moment. At the time of filming this, I'm actually bang on 28 weeks pregnant. So I'm actually just into my 3rd trimester now. So that's exciting and terrifying. But yeah, things have not been smooth. So I vlogged a little bit of my journey over on like TikTok and stuff as well. There's a lot more that I just like haven't posted via my journey from getting pregnant to now. Obviously everything was planned. I've spoken in a lot more detail about things like that in podcasts and stuff. If you want to go and follow the podcast, it's the Blob the Cobcast, and I will be posting a lot more on there again soon as well. So yeah, make sure you head over and listen to those if you're interested in a little bit more about the process and how I got pregnant and stuff. Not like that. I had IUI, so it's discussing a little bit of that process, not the actual process of how people get pregnant, so don't panic. But my pregnancy was very smooth. All my scans and everything were going great. Everything was looking fantastic. I was enjoying myself. I was finally not feeling ill anymore because I'd been really good through my 1st trimester until the very end, and then I got really, really sick. And I think that was more to do with an illness than pregnancy itself. But because I was pregnant, my midwife thinks that my immune system just couldn't cope. So I then got like every pregnancy symptom overnight. So and every awful thing you get. So I had, luckily it only lasted sort of 3-4 weeks, but I did have like a rough period of time where I was really unwell. But as soon as I came out of that as well, super breezy, got into my 2nd trimester, was feeling way better in myself, way more active. I was starting to do some riding again and some liberty and working with the horses. And yeah, so I'm going to basically start from my 20-week scan. So your 20-week scan is your anatomy scan, for those of you who don't know anything about it. I didn't either, don't worry. But at my anatomy scan, my mum came with me, we went to our local hospital and everything looked fine. So they checked his heart, they checked everything, basically, his brain, his spine, and the only thing they couldn't see were his kidneys and the very bottom of his spine, just because of how he was laying, not because they weren't there, just because he was not cooperating. So sometimes the baby is just in the wrong position and they just can't see what they need to. So they sent me on a few walks, I kept coming back, and all in all, they were happy with everything and they'd seen enough of everything to be happy. But they said to me, they were like, look, if you want to come back in a couple of weeks, we can have another look just to double check his kidneys and his spine and make sure everything's okay, basically. So Your 20-week scan is usually your last scan on the NHS. It's crazy that you have literally half the pregnancy we usually never see them and you never check on them. So that was supposed to be my last scan. So I sort of thought to myself, well, you know, I'll have another one in 2 weeks. I may as well if they've offered it to me. And it really was an offer rather than like a come back in 2 weeks. It was like a, if you want to, you can, if it gives you more peace of mind and stuff. So I was like, yeah, sure. Do you know what? It's only 20 minutes away. I'll come back in 2 weeks. So anyway, 2 weeks goes by. I get my appointment and I'm then 22 weeks pregnant. And I've been with someone to all of my appointments, either my mum or my dad, usually my mum. My mum comes like everywhere with me to all my appointments. And she was just really busy that day. And I said to her, I was like, look, don't worry, mum, it's fine. Just, you know, you crack on with stuff. Like, it's only going to be a quick appointment. They're literally just looking at his kidney and his spine. So I'm going to be in there and out in like 5 minutes and that's it. And we've already seen him loads of times. It's literally just to check everything's okay. And she was like, okay, that's fine. Are you sure? Like, and I was like, yeah, cool. So I go through on my own for this scan and I go in. And it's this guy I've never met before doing the scan. So I was like, okay, fair enough. Like, someone new, fine. And so he's talking to me. He's really chatty, really nice. And we've got really good, like, rapport going on. So he's chatting away with me about baby and everything. And he was in a much better position. So we were able to see his kidneys and his spine and his liver and everything. And like he was going through all the things that we couldn't quite see properly before and being like, yeah, I'm happy with this, happy with that, and taking like little photos and stuff. And then he was like, I know this scan, he said to me, he was like, I know this scan is just to see his kidneys and his spine, but do you want me to do like a quick once over everything else so you can see him again? Because I know this will be the last time that you get to see him on a scan. And I was like, yeah, if you wouldn't mind, that would be great. So he immediately goes to his heart and he ultrasounds over his heart and he just goes really quiet. Like he's been chatting to me constantly the entire time and I don't mean for like 30 seconds either, like he goes quiet for like 15 minutes and stays in the exact same place. And at this point, I know there's something wrong because like, why wouldn't there be? Like he's hanging around in this place for ages and he's just looking at his heart. And like initially when he first scanned over his heart, it was like, so there's his heart, you can see it ticking away, and then just silence. And then eventually he turned to me and he just puts the ultrasound thing down and just goes, if you don't mind, I'm just gonna go get a colleague to come and have a look and see what they think. So I was like, that's fine. So he leaves the room for a few minutes, as to which I'm like, breathe, it's fine. I'm like on my own, I'm thinking, oh my God, why did I come to this scan on my own? And I'm just panicking. I have like a little clip somewhere of me like just like hyperventilating to myself and just trying to take deep breaths and just calm down, because I think I'd started vlogging that day and I was going to do like a little TikTok vlog thing being like, come for the day with me to my scan and stuff. So I have a little like clip somewhere of me just being like so this woman comes in, introduces herself, and she's basically like the one higher up from him. I can't remember what her title was, but like he's like one of the general people, then she's like the next level up, whatever that is. So she then does the same. So they sit there and they sort of mumble little things in between, like between themselves, but neither of them really talk to me, other than introducing themselves and stuff. And again, that goes on for like another 10 minutes. And she's just looking over his heart again and again and again. And then she gets up and also says, do you mind if I go and get the head of department to come and also have a look at this? And I was like, okay. And at this point, I'm like nearly in tears, but holding it together, just trying to be like, I'm probably overcompensating for like, yeah, of course, it's fine. Like, bring him in, the more the merrier sort of thing. And I'm thinking in my head like, oh my God, I need to go cry in his heap somewhere. And anyway, this woman comes in and she, again, introduces herself. The head of department comes in and she scans me as well. And then all three of them, that was still in the room get up and just say they're going to go and have a chat for a few minutes. So they all just get up and leave and just leave me on my own for a few minutes, probably like 5 minutes or so. And then they come back in and say basically that they think they might have spotted something with his heart. And that obviously, as you can see, everything's like ticking away normally and stuff, but there's something that they're not entirely happy with, and they didn't really explain what. They just said they're not entirely happy, and would it be okay for me to be referred to Leeds for to see a fetal cardiologist? So I'm like, yeah, like that's fine. And I'm like at this point nearly in tears and just ready to have a breakdown. But I'm thinking maybe, like, they kept saying to me, they were like, we're not sure though, we're not sure, and like our equipment isn't as good as them, and we're not cardiologists, and we don't know anything about this isn't in our job description sort of thing, like, to do this. Like, I don't, at our local hospital, they're not great. So generally not, like, we've had poor experiences with them in the past, and they were very open and honest about that they were not specialised in these areas. And that it was likely that they were just being overcautious, and they kept reiterating that they were just being overcautious in wanting to send me there, but would it be okay if I went? So they were like, great, that's fine, we'll get all of that referred over, and you should hear from them within the next 10 days to book an appointment, and they should see you within the next 2 weeks, sort of thing. So anyway, I leave the hospital after that, and as soon as I get in the car, I just burst into tears, and yeah, it was not fun. And I got home, and my dad walks out onto the driveway. I was like, I burst into tears at the hospital, and then I managed to like pull myself together a bit on the way home. I called my cousin-in-law, and she's so supportive of me and stuff in my pregnancy and everything. She's always someone I can talk to about it all, and like, she sort of like calmed me down on the way back, and we were chatting about it together, and we're like, look, there's nothing we can do, we've just kind of got to wait and see. And then as soon as I got home, my dad comes out onto the driveway and just opens the car door when I pull in, and he's just like, so how's everything? How's my grandson? And I just burst into tears. And I'm gonna try not to again now. And he was like, oh my god, what's wrong? So I told him, I was like, there's something wrong with his heart, there's something wrong. And then we were all like crying. Mum was there at this point as well. We were all just like in floods of tears. And anyway, so this was on, I think this was on the Friday, no, the Thursday. I think it was a Thursday. So anyway, it's the Thursday, and the following morning, we've all sort of like chatted about it and stuff, and we've gone to bed thinking like, there's nothing we can do, and they're probably wrong. Like, they're usually wrong. And you know, they're not specialists, and they've said and reiterated over and over again, they're just being overcautious. So anyway, the next morning, literally bang on 9 a.m, the phone rings, and it's Leeds to say, can you come in today? Which immediately red flags that they want to, like, it's good that you're going in quickly, but when they say it could take 10 days just to hear from someone, and they're calling you at like 9:01 the following morning, like, it's like alarming, because you're thinking, why do they need to see me so quickly? And obviously, you know what wait times can be for the NHS if you live in this country. Like, the fact that they get you in that quick usually means something's wrong. And anyway, so we were like, yeah, of course, like, we'll come in. So we all got straight in the car, got up and left. And I just went with my mum again, because like, we were just like thinking they're wrong, like, and we're just gonna go through. Like, my local hospital had kind of made it, and it might sound stupid at this point, but like, they've made it really, really sound like we were just gonna drive through to Leeds. Like, they were gonna be like, it's fine, Scarborough, we're just being overcautious. That's where my local hospital is. And everything's okay. So that was kind of how they made it sound. So anyway, we went through to Leeds, and they did this scan. They were all really nice. There was 5 people in the room, 5 like medical professionals in the room, and yeah, it took me and my mum ages to get parked as well. It was a nightmare. All the spaces in Leeds are like tiny, so we were stressing, but good job. We left very early for once. We're normally late for everything, and we left very early. But anyway, yeah, so there were 5 people in this room doing the scan, and that consisted of 2 people, like 2 proper like experienced people on the actual one doing the ultrasound, and the other sat right next to her looking at the screen. And then there was like a midwife and 2, I say students, they weren't like young students, they were like people from other departments that I think were like switching into this department, so they were like learning a different thing, if that makes sense, rather than like, you know, young adults like learning for the first time. So we really didn't know. The way they like formatted it was that we would have this scan, and then we would go wait in the waiting area again, and then they'd call us through to give us the results of the scan. So we have the scan done, and we were in there for literally 5 minutes. That was it. And so we really didn't know what to think though, because they kept saying to us, they were like, look, we're going to be talking a lot between ourselves, ignore us, it's fine, and we'll talk to you after. But the only things that they said during the scan were like, they were going over things and they'd be like, yeah, that looks good, that's good. And we didn't really know whether they were talking about his heart or like the quality of the image that they were getting, if that makes sense, because babies move around a lot sometimes when you're ultrasounding them. At least my boy does. So he was wriggling around everywhere, so we didn't really know whether they were being like, everything's fine, or whether they were like, oh, that's a good picture sort of thing. So anyway, we were sat there listening to everything they say, and the only alarming thing they said in the entire thing was that, oh, she went over a certain little bit, and the woman that was like the other professional that was at the ultrasound machine that wasn't doing it just turned around to the students and just said, did you see that? And that was it. That was the only thing that she said, and she was a little bit stern-faced when she said it. And so other than that, the whole thing took 5 minutes. Me and my mum, they sent us like to the toilets after, because they make you have a full bladder for all of these scans and stuff, so they're generally somewhat uncomfortable. So they were like, go to the toilets, go back to the waiting area, and we'll come get you in a minute. So me and my mum were in the toilets, and we're like chatting between ourselves, like, what do you think? Like, and we're both kind of like, I don't know, because we both noticed like the things they said, and we were like, does that mean that everything's fine, or like what does that mean? So anyway, we go into this room, they call us pretty much straight in. We like went to sit down, and they were like, come straight through. So we go into this room, and immediately we walk in, and there's a freaking sofa in the corner. And I know it sounds so stupid, but the fact that they were sitting us on this comfy sofa, immediately my heart just sank, because I was like, why do we need to sit down? Like, why do we need to go sit on a freaking sofa? Why can't I stand or just sit in a normal chair? Like, and I think mum said when we came out after, she was like, I felt the same. Like, we walked in, I saw the sofa, and everything was just, I felt like breaking into tears immediately. So anyway, literally we go sit down, and her first words are just, I'm really sorry, but there is something wrong with his heart. And that was just, I'll never forget those words coming out of her mouth, and just thinking, oh my god, because we were so fully thinking that it was all fine, and then we were just going to go through, and it was like, nice to meet you sort of thing, and you're all good, like, have a nice rest of your pregnancy, and you know, it's great that you're in the hospital, have been thorough and stuff, and like, that was all we were thinking was going to happen. And then all of a sudden it's like, there is a problem. So anyway, they tell us what the problem is, and basically he has something called tetralogy of Fallot. So tetralogy of Fallot is basically, tetralogy is, I think it's Greek for 4 problems of Fallot, which is the heart. So there's 4 issues with his heart, basically. So obviously the heart is split into like 2 main chambers, like 4 chambers and 2 main sides. This is going by my like GCSE biology, and it's like you get deoxygenated blood in, that's like oxygenated, goes around the body, and some of it goes to the lungs, and like yeah, there's a whole thing to it, but generally it's, you know, it comes into one side and goes out the other. But the main issue with his is that there is a hole in the middle, between two chambers where there shouldn't be a hole. So it basically, that's one of the problems, and then there's a few others, like narrowing of certain vessels, I think, and then like a larger piece of muscle where it shouldn't be. There's just 4 issues within, but the main being that there is a hole where there shouldn't be a hole. So because he's in me at the moment, he's safe, because apparently like the pressure in both sides of the heart is equal when they're in the womb, with the blood flow going through, so it doesn't cause any issues because the pressure at both sides is equal. Whereas when they're born, unlike, well, the way we are, because we're breathing and stuff differently, obviously they're getting their oxygen and everything through the placenta and stuff, so they're not actually like breathing, it's just being oxygenated differently, whereas we're breathing air, so the sides of our heart are never quite equally pressurized. So it wasn't causing any issues with him in the womb, basically. But yeah, they basically explained to us this condition, and explained that it is solvable. And I actually know one person from school that had it. It says 1 in 6,000 babies have it. And you just think to yourself, like, those odds, like 1 in 6,000. It's crazy. Like, if you were going for a surgery of some sort and someone said you have a 1 in 6,000 chance of dying, you wouldn't think to yourself you were gonna die. You'd just be like, fair enough, that's pretty much nil. Like, to think that he is that 1 in 6,000, I'm that 1 in 6,000 is insane. And there's a lot of other heart issues that babies can have and stuff, but that 1 in 6,000 is for that particular issue. So anyway, they discussed that with us, and I feel like crying immediately because my mum's like holding my hand and stuff the whole time. She can feel me trying to stay strong, and that in itself was enough to really shock us and scare us. And they said that it was fixable with surgery, and I was like, you mean like what sort of surgery are we talking about here? And she was like, he will need full open heart surgery when he's 6 months old. And I think, like, I know that's fine, and like sorry, I'm gonna cry again. Me just trying to laugh through my crying so that I don't cry anymore. It's something that the success rates are really, really high for it. So it's not something that's generally life-threatening, like it is without treatment, but with the surgery it's generally very successful, which is amazing, you know. That's exactly what you want to hear. But like at the time, just going from like the day before, waking up in the morning before thinking that everything was fine and I was having a completely normal pregnancy in every sense of the word and all was perfect and everything, to then finding out that my baby's gonna have his chest cut open and he's gonna have a huge scar for the rest of his life, and he's gonna have open heart surgery that takes at least like 6 hours to do and stuff. Like, it's just really scary and it's a real shock. And I think, like, I know I'm technically not a mum yet, but like it's just really scary. So anyway, I'm gonna cry. I'm trying not to cry. This is the whole aim of the video, is not to cry. And I feel like I'm just failing all the time. He's gonna watch this back one day and be like, Jesus Christ, Mum, please delete this off the internet. But anyway, we were thinking that was the worst possible part of this. And then she said that this particular condition, because we were screened for everything, myself and the donor, we know that neither of us carry a congenital heart problem, and we know that neither of us carry any chromosomal defects that when placed together could cause something like that. But she said it is 50-50 with this particular condition, that it can be caused by a rare chromosomal defect that would severely impact his life if he has it. So basically that meant there was a 50% chance that he had a chromosomal defect that would essentially give him very little to no quality of life. And I'm not going to say which defect it is, because there are some people out there living with it and some families out there trying to deal with it, and I don't want it to come across as that like I'm saying that these people shouldn't be here, or that, you know, there's anything wrong with them, like in terms of anything. Like, I don't want to come across like that, but it's basically, it would have meant that he would have had no immune system. He'd have struggled to go anywhere, and anything catching even the slightest little cold would have landed him in like intensive care, basically. He wouldn't have been able to eat food ever. He'd be tube fed his whole life from birth. And probably most severe of all, his mental capacity would be so poor. There's a huge range for it. He can have the other issues, and then his mental capacity be anywhere from sort of the things we class as like mild mental health things, and to think, like we were talking about this the other week, to call them like mild stuff, like they're saying like severe depression, severe anxiety, ADHD, autism, all these things, like, and like all of those together would be the nice side of this, and like and uncommon usually with that condition for it to be that nice. And I'm thinking like, oh my god, I nearly like I've been in really dark places before with depression and anxiety and things, and like that's just depression and anxiety, like on their own, and not like severe like I don't know how to describe it, but you know, when you think about it, you're like, oh my god, he would have that times like 1,000 plus other things as well, at the lightest scale of things. But they said most likely before the age of 18 he would be a full schizophrenic, and he would hear voices, he'd have very little quality of life along with the other conditions as well. And it would just break me to have him and not be able to help him. Like, I know it would ruin his life, but it would also ruin everyone else's. And I don't mean from like the inconvenience of having him here, I mean from the point of view of like watching someone you love that much like suffer so much every single day and not be able to help them at all is just the worst torture anyone could possibly think of. And they said like with that he could be violent obviously as well, and yeah, people who are schizophrenic, again, that's a huge range within itself of what people are like, but a lot of them can turn out to be very severely schizophrenic, and live in institutions and things. And you know, at this point I'm 22 weeks pregnant, and they said to me the only way to determine whether he has this chromosomal defect is to do an amniocentesis, which is to put a needle into the amniotic fluid that surrounds him and take some samples out and test the DNA from within that to see if it comes back positive or negative for it. And they said based on his heart condition and this chromosomal thing, if he has it, they said I'd be well within my rights, and they wouldn't, you know, advise otherwise, but I'd be well within my rights to terminate the pregnancy. So I've literally gone into this appointment thinking there was nothing wrong, to coming out thinking that like I'd have to let him go. And I know, and that's why I don't want to disclose the name of the condition, because there are people out there that live with it, and there's families that deal with it regardless of where it is on the scale and stuff, and like they do so well to deal with it, and a lot of them may have known before birth, or may have only known after. Like if I hadn't have gone in for that 22-week scan and stuff, like I wouldn't have known anything until he was born. And they said like with his heart condition I just wouldn't have seen him, they'd have just taken him away, and not like, and I wouldn't have known why, and they'd have just taken him to like intensive care, into the NICU. So anyway, we come out of that and we decided that we wanted to have the amniocentesis because I had to know. because she was basically the law in the UK is that generally you can't have a termination past 24 weeks. And the problem with the amniocentesis was that the results take up to 4 weeks to come. So that would have put me at 26 weeks getting the results, which would put me over that time allotment. But the cardiology department were like, you would still be able to have a termination. There would be no issues with that at all. Because basically it means it goes to like a vote within the hospital. So they get like 2 representatives from each department, and they all look over the medical history and stuff and decide whether they think it's the right option for you to abort the pregnancy. So they were like, there would be no, and only 2 people have to vote yes, basically, out of all those departments, I think it is. I think that's what they said. So they were like, there would be no discrepancy at all. If you had that condition, there would be no issue, there would be nothing standing in your way. And it's awful, because it kind of like, as much as I really appreciated them being supportive, I also, like, I want him so badly that, like, the thought of then having to go through that and to terminate at that point would just be heartbreaking, because he is like, I know it's all like pro-life and pro-choice and stuff. I'm very much pro-choice out of all of that, because I don't think anyone should be in a position where they don't have control over their body. But even in being pro-choice, I think after a certain point, like, you know, no one would abort a baby after a certain point if they didn't have to, sort of thing. Like, you know, no one, it's not like a form of contraception to abort your baby at 24 weeks. Like, usually when I say pro-choice, I am pro-choice fully through and through, but it's usually within like the first 12 weeks. Usually even earlier, it's like 6 weeks and stuff. Like, people have missed their period, just found out they're pregnant, and for whatever reason, whether it's an ectopic pregnancy or they just can't have the baby, you know, and they're just not in the right place in their life, or it's been a project of rape or anything like that, like, they should have the choice to deal with that in whatever way they see fit, and I'll always stand by that. But it's very different, it feels so different later down the line, because as much as it was my choice, I still didn't want to do it, but I knew that deep down I knew I'd have to, because I just couldn't see him like that, and I couldn't raise him like that and watch him every single day being in pain and not being able to help him and not being able to have a life and go to school and do all the things that we take for granted every day. So anyway, I agreed to have the amniocentesis, which I went back in for the following week. Unfortunately, the team that did the amniocentesis weren't as nice with me as the cardiology team. The cardiology team were lovely, and my whole family, by the way, were really supportive in whatever decision I came to, and were all very supportive of the fact that if the results came back and he had that chromosomal defect, that I would be doing the right thing by not having him anymore. So anyway, I went for my amniocentesis, and my mum and dad came with me, and they did like a scan before, and it just felt really heartless. Like, they were scanning me as if it was just any normal scan, so they were just like kept turning around to me and smiling at me and being like, oh, well, there's this and there's that and stuff, and I'm looking at this thinking like, I just want him. Like, you know, it's we're not here to have this like happy-go-lucky scan. Like, we know there's an issue. I just want to know what's wrong and that everything's okay. And then she asked me if I thought about what I would do if the results were positive for the chromosomal condition, and I said, well, as much as I want him, and I wouldn't want to in a million years, I think I would have to go ahead with the termination, because I couldn't see him with his quality of life be that poor, you know, and see him suffer every day of his life. And she, you know, there were 2 other people in the room with her, and they both were like really sweet and understanding, and for some reason she just wasn't, and she immediately was like, well, you're 22 weeks now, so by the time the results are in, you will be over 24 weeks, and it will then go to a vote. So she said you may not be allowed to have a termination if you let it get to that stage. So she said, we can do the amniocentesis today, or we can just go ahead and terminate the pregnancy today. To which we were all just like, what? Like, we're here to find out whether he has the condition, to see where we're at. Like, I would not just terminate him. She was like, you could just terminate him based on his heart condition. It's like, but the heart condition is solvable, isn't it? And she's like, oh, of course, but some people just don't want that. So you can terminate based on that if you want to, and not bother having the amniocentesis to find out the chromosomal thing. And then, even though we said that wasn't what we wanted to do, she then went into vivid detail of how they would go about performing the procedure of aborting him, and that instead of doing the amniocentesis needle, they could put a needle into his heart to stop his heart beating, and then go ahead with the D&C and abort him that day and stuff. And it was just so hard. My mum had a bit of a go at the woman because I was too sort of like shocked really to say anything. So my mum sort of set her straight. She wasn't a very nice lady. And anyway, we went ahead and had the amniocentesis done. The amniocentesis carries risks of miscarriage in itself, albeit low ones, but still risks, because you are basically poking a hole in the amniotic sac that the baby is in. So anyway, I had that done, and that was the weirdest feeling in my life, by the way, as well. And it was like, not the worst pain ever, but it was painful, and it was just really strange. I could see they did it obviously under ultrasound guidance, so I could see like him on the screen, and then I could see the line where the amniotic sac was, and just above that I could see the line of my skin. So I'm watching it on the screen as they put the needle in. So she put the needle into my skin, and that just felt like a normal injection, like a sharp scratch on the skin. And then you could see the needle coming down, and she was like, when it hits the uterus, you might just feel like a little bit of cramping and stuff. And literally, like, as soon as it touched that line where the uterus was, I just got the most intense pain, like, all the way around my belly. And so it was just the weirdest sensation ever. Would not recommend. And it took a good few minutes. Oh, it felt like forever. It was probably only a few minutes. It felt like 10, but it was probably like 2 or 3. Because it's a really long needle, like it's a big needle, but it's really, really tiny, like it's really thin, because obviously they don't want to poke a big hole in the sac. So the needle itself is long in length, but really narrow. And they use that to obviously draw up the liquid, but because it's so narrow and they're taking their tube of liquid that's like this big, they, like, it took ages to get it out, basically. So, they get this liquid, and anyway, all goes well, and I had some cramping afterwards and stuff, but no bleeding, and the cramping subdued after a couple of days, which was good. And then it was the waiting period, and they'd said the earliest it could come back was 2 weeks, and then, but it's usually around 3. So anyway, for the first couple of weeks, I felt okay, really. I was like, I don't know, it's your brain, I guess, just finds ways to keep you busy and to compartmentalize things, and I just got on with stuff. I think it's because in my head I knew there was no chance at all in getting the results back in that time period. And then when it got to 2 weeks, I started to wake up every day feeling more anxious and sort of just desperately wanting results and stuff, obviously. By this point, I was just over 24 weeks pregnant. So I knew that time allotment had gone. And she got us really worried about the time allotment too. The lady that did the amniocentesis that wasn't very nice, she had us then really, because cardiology were like, there would be no problems at all, but she was dead set on that it would be really hard and probably not possible, sort of thing, to have a termination. So anyway, that last couple of weeks, it took 4 weeks for the results to come through. And that last couple of weeks was just agonizing because he really started kicking a lot that week as well. Like, I'd had little flutters, but these are like full kicks and like rolling around in my belly and stuff, and I could feel everything. And it's really hard because I found myself almost trying to like disassociate, and like when I should have been there, like loving being able to feel my baby move and taking in all that love and feeling all the love I have for him, like I instead was almost trying to mentally convince myself that I wasn't pregnant and that none of it was happening. And I guess I must have been doing that to prepare myself for the possibility of not being able to have him, to sort of almost mentally soften the blow. But it just made me feel so guilty that as his mum, instead of loving him, I was like pretending he wasn't there. And I'd go out shopping with my mum and stuff, and we'd see things that we wanted to buy for him, and it went from us like just buying loads of stuff before to being like, do we get these things? And it's awful to think, because like what's worse, what is worse, thinking like we'll get these things and then not be able to use them perhaps, or that we don't get them and we're not getting them because we think we might not need them anymore. Like, I don't know which way of looking at it is worse, and in the end we decided to just get the things anyway because it seemed worse to like almost be it was almost kind of like you were saying, well, we don't need him because like he's not gonna be here. So we got the things and continued as like we were doing before and stuff. It wasn't like before, it was always so different. And then when it got to week 3, I started calling them and trying to get some kind of results, and they told me that they'd managed to, basically they have to extract DNA from the sample and then like test the DNA basically. So she managed to tell me that DNA had been extracted, but that it had then been sent to Newcastle to be tested. So it was with them, and that they expected it back. This was, I think, on the Friday that I rang them. They expected it on the Monday morning. So Monday morning came. I spent 6 hours trying to call them, and I couldn't get through to them at all. It just kept ringing out or just not ringing at all. And eventually I got through to them, and they were like, we have the results here, but we're understaffed, so we have no one to read them to you. So we'll do our utmost to get someone to read them to you by Friday. And I was like, are you joking me? Like, I'd been ringing and I'd been so patient and so polite with them all. And like, when I say like, I was a little bit more stern, like I was not nasty with anyone. I don't hold the capability to be nasty with people. I'm one of those people that's like, oh, I'm gonna really like tell someone off, and then I'm like, excuse me. So like, I don't hold the ability to be that nasty, but I was really upset with them at that point. I was like, don't you think it's a bit much? Like, it's now been 3.5 weeks. You told me they would be here on Monday, and now you're saying that you have them and you're just not gonna give them to me, and it's literally just as simple as that it's either positive or it's negative. Like, it's not this ultra difficult thing to read. It's like, I understand it is difficult, but you have to also understand that I'm now at this point 26 weeks pregnant, and I've been told that after 24 that things get really complicated and stuff, and I need to know what's happening as soon as possible, and it's really time sensitive, and you're giving me this news. And she apologized profusely and stuff, and like, anyway, she just said they'd do their utmost to get it to me by the Friday. So anyway, the Wednesday rolls round, and just after breakfast the phone goes, and it's Leeds Hospital, and my mum sat at the side of me, and I didn't put it on speaker, but my mum could just hear it anyway, and it was for the results. And initially I was not thinking it was going to be good, because as soon as I picked up the phone, the lady just went, how are you doing, darling? And like, it just, the way she said it was like, how are you doing, darling? Like, it just sounded like she was getting ready to, almost like saying, are you ready to sit down and have this news, sort of thing. I thought she could have just picked up the phone and said like, I've got some good news for you, like, you know, and then taken my details and given me the news, but she said it like that. So anyway, it was good news, and he doesn't have it, and it is just his heart that we have to worry about. And like, I know everything's now going to be fine, and that although he still needs open heart surgery and potentially a stent at birth and another surgery in his teens later down the line, I know he is going to be okay, and he's going to have a normal quality of life, and hopefully going to have a very long life and live a long time, and be happy. So so we got the news that we wanted, which for some reason makes me just as emotional as possibly having the bad news before. My mum heard on the phone immediately and just burst into tears because the lady was just like, I'm really pleased to tell you he's tested negative for everything. And my mum was like, what does that mean? What does that mean? And she was like, we've tested him for like over 300 different things, apparently, on this like wider scale of testing. And he's tested negative for every single one of them. And I was like, so does that cover, and I said like the one that they were worried about, and she was like, I have that result in front of me now and it is negative and it's all fine. So me and my mum were just in tears on the phone with this woman, and knowing it's all going to be okay. So that's kind of what the last 8 weeks have held, and for the last couple of weeks I guess I've been just kind of processing everything because it's just been a lot. Like, it's I think, I don't know, it was like a breath of fresh air, a big sigh of relief getting the results, but at the same time I spent so long being so stressed and depressed and worried and anxious that like, I think mentally I was just so drained after getting the news that I just had a week of like just being completely drained. So I didn't feel ready to just like jump on here and film a video, and I've still failed because I friggin' cried the entire time again. But yeah, that's kind of what's happened with everything, and it's been another couple of weeks trying to get some answers on what I can do, like work-wise as well, like with the horses and things. I haven't ridden for weeks and weeks and weeks and weeks, because I was worried about his heart condition, and obviously so were they, and we didn't want to do anything until we knew either way what was happening. So obviously now we know, and all is okay. And they've said that me doing some light to moderate exercise shouldn't affect his heart rate at all. So basically that means I can pooter around on the horses if I want to. So I'm just going to stick to doing the occasional little something on Nero and Carly, because they're my two horses that I know full well that I can just have a nice light little potter around the village and they're going to behave and be really good. So I don't have to worry with them, whereas Tilly and Harry can just be a little bit spicy, and though I trust them and I love them to bits, I don't, last thing I need now is to come off at this stage. I just want to sit on the ones that I feel fully just like on, and literally will just poot around at like 2 miles an hour, and not put anyone at risk at all. Like, and Nero and Carly, I know that sounds daft because you guys have seen Nero with his bucking and stuff and things, but Nero looks after me so well, and so does Carly. Like, they can be stupid, but they won't be, because they know to look after me now, and they just know. I don't know how to describe it. People watch and people listen and they're like, oh, well, anything could happen. Yes, it could, but anything could happen when you get in a car or when you go for a walk and stuff. Like, I know my horses so well inside and out, and that's why I'm not riding specific ones. And I'm not going to be doing masses of riding on Nero and Carly either, maybe just once or twice a week. I'll just take one of them out, so they'll probably ride like once a week, and it will literally just be a walk around the village, so it's not going to be very exciting. But I've only got 12 weeks to go, so I now have to decide whether I want to be induced and have him in Leeds, or whether I want to try and just wait to see when I go into labour and have him in York. So there's pros and cons to both. I'd rather him be in Leeds, just because if anything did go wrong, they have one of the best cardiology teams in the UK for neonatal cardiology, you know, fetal cardiology. So I'd rather him be there because I know any problems they'd encounter, they could face them there. But that does mean being induced, so it means a slightly higher risk for a forceps delivery or a C-section, which I'm not scared of. If I have to have a C-section, I have to have a C-section. I prefer not to, just because the recovery for it is so much longer after. And because it's just me, I don't have a partner, so obviously I've got my mum and dad and like family members that would come and help out if I did have to have a C-section. I know I wouldn't be alone, but it's just a bit different. Like, you just feel really like incapacitated, so I'd prefer to be able to get on with things as soon as possible. And I'm one of those people that I don't like to be laid out somewhere doing nothing. I like to be up and active and doing things. So you know, even if that's just going out and mucking a couple of horses out, or like just haying the horses and just brushing one or something, like I like to just be outside a little bit too. And if I have a natural delivery, there's a much better chance that within a couple of weeks I'll be up and out and doing bits and bobs. I don't mean I'll be out like gallivanting around, but I'll be up doing bits. Whereas in the C-section, you can't even like lift a kettle for a few days. So it's a lot. It's the difference between like 2 to 4 weeks and like 6 to 12 weeks in recovery. So it makes a bit of a difference, but we'll cross that bridge when we get to it. That's a decision I have to think of now. But yeah, I just wanted to share with you all what's happening. I feel so congested now. It's crying my nose. But yeah, I hope that makes sense to everyone as to why I've not wanted to come on here. I'm very, what's the word? I just like to be very transparent and very genuine when I'm online. I can't stand, if I'm going through something as bad as that in life, I cannot pretend to come on here and be like, hey guys, you should go check out this ad or something. Like, it's just not, like, I contacted all the brands that I was currently working with, which wasn't many, because as I mentioned in my previous video, I'm not doing as much brand work and stuff, but there were a couple that I was supposed to be working with, and I was like, look, I'm really sorry, like, I don't mind like anything you've given me, whether it's a gifted thing or whether it's like some kind of financial thing. I was like, I'll give it back. I just can't do this right now. Like, I literally can't. I can't go online when everything is happening and put a smile on my face and promote something to anyone. Like, it's just not something I'm gonna do. And I didn't even want to go on and make like a vlog, let alone any kind of promotion or any kind of ad. Like, I don't like ads as it is, but that was the last thing I was gonna go on and do. So yeah, this video has been so freaking long. I'm so impressed with my phone for actually filming and recording this the entire time. But yeah, I am gonna be back now, and my vlogs might not be too exciting, obviously, because I can't do an awful lot of stuff, but I want to discuss some of the exciting plans that I have going forward and the way in which things have changed for me, but I believe for the better. And I'm really excited about my future with the horses now more than ever. The yard has also changed an awful lot since I last did a yard tour. As you can see, like, I'm in my tack room now, and it's a completely different tack room to the ones you guys have seen. You know, everything has just changed so astronomically. I watched that video back the other day and I was like, oh my god, this doesn't even look like the same yard, for the most part anyway. So we're gonna do a yard tour video at some point very soon, and also a lorry tour, because we actually have a new lorry as well, which we've had for a couple of months now, but it's amazing, it's beautiful. And it was an absolute steal. Still can't believe we managed to get it, because we weren't even looking for a lorry. I used to show them to my dad all the time and be like, maybe we should go halves on this, like, and it would be insanely expensive. It'd be like, yeah, we're not getting another lorry in a million years, because they're just so expensive. And then even my dad, I showed him the one that we have when I found it, and he was like, oh my god, we're gonna have to go and see this, like, it's got to be too good to be true. So but yeah, I can't wait to show you guys that and discuss all my plans with you all, and I'll take you with me on like a journey of like what it's like to have horses and be pregnant and stuff, if that's something you guys are interested in, and I can vlog bits like that. But obviously I'm not going to be doing loads of like meetups and things like that, because it's just, my horses aren't fit enough for anyone to come and ride like properly and do anything with, and I'm not going to go and sit on anyone else's horses, so videos are just kind of going to be a little bit boring. I'll make them as interesting as I can though, and yeah, we'll go from there. But thank you guys for watching this, and even whether you watched it or did what I would have probably done and whacked it on in the background, or not watched it at all and just been like, thank you very much for all your support. I can't begin to tell you how many messages I've had with all of this going on, even though you guys didn't know exactly what was going on. Obviously you knew there was something wrong, because I'd said on Instagram and stuff that I was taking a bit of a break and that I was going to be really inconsistent and stuff, and you guys were just amazing. Like, honestly, you could have all just come around and been like, again, like, she's disappeared for the millionth time, and yet you were all just so supportive and sending me the loveliest messages. I've got so many of them saved, and there were a lot that I couldn't respond to because there were literally hundreds of messages. But mark my words, I've read every single one of them, and they've each lifted me up so much. And yeah, and I hope that you guys understand my thought process throughout this video and stuff as well. Obviously I know a lot of people won't agree with the way my thought process went during my experience, or maybe you will, and that's completely up to each individual, and I understand that. So it's it is what it is. So yeah. Anyway, I'm gonna go because it's now dark, because I've been speaking for nearly an hour and even I am sick of hearing my own voice. So I'm gonna be back with another video really soon, but I just wanted to get this one out of the way and fill everyone in on exactly what's been happening. And yeah, I love you all very much. I really do. Apart from if any of you are like, you know, weird, like weird, like criminals, and like anyone like that, I don't love you. But for everyone who has sent me a lovely message and been really supportive and sweet and continue to follow me on my journey and stuff, I really do appreciate it. I love you all very much for that, because it really does feel like I'm not alone when I'm sharing things like this, which is so stupid because I'm sat in here on my own, but I don't feel alone, and I don't feel like I'm talking to my phone. I feel like I'm talking to all of you, and that's the reason why I have shared so many things, personal things, over the years, is because I feel like I'm so lucky to have this little community online that really understand and are really there for you in a lot of ways when you need them, and I'm really, really thankful for that. I'm really grateful. So thank you all, and I will see you very soon with a less cryy and depressy video. I'll try anyway. See you soon. Bye.